All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Comic Book Radio, episode 29. My guest tonight is PHILL DIAZ, and I, of course, am your host, Peter Cimetti. Hope you guys are doing very well. Thank you for joining me tonight. Looks like we have a comment from earlier. It is Alejandro. Alejandro says, "Hey, what's up, Alejandro?" Jaded One is here too. What's up, Jaded One? Hope you're doing well. We got the Beam Pad here too. Beam Pad says, "Hail Pete, hail Phil, hail Pete and Phil." All right. We also got NTM Comics says, "Is this the real Philip Diaz in the flesh?" Yes, very, very soon. Philip Diaz in the flesh will be on this show. I appreciate you guys being here tonight. Again, it's going to be a fun one. I wanted to have Phil on for a while now. Let's get a little music here. All right, there we go. And without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour, Mr. PHILL DIAZ. What's up, Phil?
Yeah, cup of coffee in the big time. Yeah, that's right. What's up,
yeah. Pete? Hey, yeah, man. Yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage.
Dig it.
Phil is playing to a capacity crowd tonight on Comic Book Radio. Man, oh man. Phil, you've got a book that's just all kinds of extreme, in-your-face action all over the place, and I wanted to talk to you about that. And what I'm talking about is Lost Pages. Now, you're on the third book of this, right?
Yes. This is book 3. We did a supplemental kind of like a short story book as well for the first campaign. But yeah, this is the third one in the series. And,
wow,
it's going well. Really enjoying putting this stuff out. It's really fun.
That's awesome, man. Very nice. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Now, a subject that I want to talk about tonight, obviously, I do want to talk about action and storytelling. That's what we got listed here in the subtitle of the show. But I also want to talk about the paradox of the anti-hero. And what I mean by that is the fact that these are oftentimes heroes that aren't really that heroic. So it is a bit ironic. It is a paradox. Was this something you've always been drawn to, these kinds of characters?
Not always. You know, I grew up watching stuff like the X-Men animated series, Spider-Man, like the Bruce Timm Justice League stuff. And you didn't see that a lot in there, unless you're talking about an episode of Spider-Man that had the Punisher in it. And even in that, he wasn't really portrayed as much of an anti-hero as he is in the comics, because I think that was definitely geared towards a younger audience. The cartoons were, but along the line, while I was growing up, I guess my taste evolved into having a corner of stuff that I liked being that. I think Watchmen was a big part of that. Kind of seeing that subversion of these heroes, characters like Rorschach, the Spawn, the Spawn film. Growing up with that, even though people dog on it, but I grew up with that film. So my taste.
It's a film of its time,
Yeah, definitely. I saw someone posted a GIF of Spawn from the film where his mask goes over his head, and I'm like, this looks better than I remembered. I don't know if they did like a HD version or something.
Yeah.
Did they revitalize that?
I don't know if they did. I just remember watching Spawn, I think a couple years ago, and I could overlook a lot of the CGI that was in it. It was more a couple other things about the movie that I had gripes with, but. Especially nowadays CGI is so overused to the point that it's horrible. To me, it's worse than what happened in Spawn, because it's everywhere. It's all over the place. Everything, you can't even trust it. Every scene, from scene to scene in a movie, you're like, is this a real scene? You know, every single
Right.
thing feels like the actors are just in a green screen room somewhere, which most of the time they are. It's this big,
Right.
huge green screen room. And then they've got the dots all over them, you know, so they could pick up. And then they're just like acting with various things and people who sometimes aren't even there. So people give a lot of crap to that kind of stuff. But I mean, the Spawn movie, considering the budget, the time, everything else, effects wise especially, is not as bad as people want to think.
I
At
agree.
least that's how I feel.
I agree. I went to see that Flash movie, and that thing is 75% CGI.
Oh man, you saw
And
that.
yeah, Spawn looks better than most of the CGI in that Flash film. It's unwatchable because of the CGI.
Yeah, I love that 90s Flash show. I think it was just one season or so, but I loved
Yeah.
it. You got that Danny Elfman theme. Yeah, it's good
Yeah.
stuff. So when you get the and yeah, I miss a lot of practical effects nowadays in movies too. What I really thought, especially when I was a kid growing up, and I wonder if you felt this way too, you see a lot of this great puppetry within film.
Hmm.
And then you see some of the CGI that they're doing for certain things. And then all I could think as a kid was like, oh man, it's going to be awesome because you have the puppetry's going to get better and better, and
Yeah.
the CGI will get better and better. And the marriage of the two is going to make a lot of these movies look incredible. But then eventually they kind of left a lot of the puppetry and practical effects to the wayside, and it just became full blown CGI. And I feel like it lost a lot of the soul and the heart that was there with that stuff.
I agree. You look at something like Aliens or the first Mortal Kombat film with Goro, and that was all puppetry, and like Goro looked awesome in that. So it's odd that maybe it was just doesn't even seem like it would be too expensive considering how much they're spending on the budget for this computer generated stuff. It's very odd.
Yeah, yeah. I loved anything that the Jim Henson Studios were a part of. That was always a lot of fun. I mean, look at something like Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
And when that came out, and then you would think, wow, it's just gonna get better than this, and it sort of did. And then
Yep.
even the Ninja Turtles franchise is a real hallmark of where they stopped caring about puppetry. You know, by the time it gets to the third one, holy crap.
Yeah.
That is frightening. But all right, enough about the CGI and the puppetry and everything else. We want to talk tonight to Phil again about action and anti-heroes. All right, so when you're setting out to tell this story with the Lost Pages, and you've got this character called Crimstone, right? Crimstone.
Mm-hmm.
What's the motive here when you're talking about these characters? I know that they're kicking ass and they're very bombastic characters. They're so large, so much larger than life. What inspires you to tell stories that can still keep the characters grounded enough that you can put some emotional impact in there too?
Well, I talk a lot about this on the show I do. It's like a rotating show called The Creative Block between myself, Narwhal, Irene, Hyper Wizard. And my thing is I love characters and kind of like how I shape my, I guess, worlds or storylines or comics. It starts with a character, either, a name or the look of a character. And I've learned that that's different from other creators. Some people might start with a world, like a fantasy world or a premise. The way my brother and I do it is we just love character arcs, character growth, the uniqueness, and that's something that really drew me to the X-Men because they're all individual characters with different abilities, and that's a playground for an imagination for myself. So I think that's why a lot of people tell us that our characters stand out. They're very different from each other, and we love like the over-the-top silhouettes of them. You want that to kind of make them distinct from each other. Kind of a key thing that I like to do with these stories is, or how we kind of formatted the Lost Pages, is it's a universe filled with different heroes, but they also, each of them kind of touches on a different genre or archetype. And throughout the years, we started with the silhouette back in, man, like 2011 was what we were doing this stuff back in the day, going to Wizard Worlds.
Oh
And
wow, man, nice. You
yeah,
got the journey documented. That's great.
and this isn't even illustrated. It's photographs of myself and friends in front of a green screen that my brother would Photoshop to
That's
make.
so 2011. You said 2011, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the silhouette there punching this guy out. And this is where the journey started. Since then, it was very hard to, schedule our buddies coming into our garage and taking pictures in front of a green screen. There was a point in time where we were just going to malls and being like, hey, do you want to take pictures with us, young lady? And for this internet project? And they're like, no, get away from us. But that's how it started. And so it was hard to rally everybody. I was going to college at the time, so we kind of took a break on that, but I was taking writing classes. In a lot of my short story classes, I would write about these characters, so I would have this backlog of kind of lore for them until we got into crowdfunding, and we puzzle pieced everything together for the first Lost pages, so they were kind of like vignettes to introduce the audience. But talking about the anti-hero thing, the character that kind of is most anti-hero is the silhouette character. Who's, like he was the first character we came up with, and it just, I mean, Todd
McFarlane foil
McFarlane
on that, very nice, shiny.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. That's number 2. So that turned out insane. But for anti-heroes, I think Todd McFarlane touches on it the best when he's talking about Spawn. Like, this is the guy that's going to get stuff done. If something happened, in his words, if something happened to his kid, he's going to go out there and take the law into his own hands. And that's a totally different archetype from something like Superman or even Batman. Some people call Batman an anti-hero, but Spawn and Batman are very
there's still that line he wouldn't cross.
Exactly. So
not purposefully anyway.
Right. And the question is, like, how do you as a writer try to make that genre different and put your twist on it with your new character that you've come up with? So stuff like that is fun to explore when you're creating characters like this.
Now, do you find it difficult at all? Because a lot of people have this argument against the anti-hero. They say, well, how can you define that character as a hero without pushing them right to the edge, but not over in certain ways? Because it seems like they're always stepping over the line. They're always just about to turn into a villain, technically. And so some people say that there's such a gray area with that or whatever. But do you find that it's difficult at all when you're writing a hero like that to create a believable kind of emotional intelligence for this hero, being aware of the things that they're doing without turning into just like this craven, bloodlust filled villain who can't discern right from wrong anymore?
Right.
And people oftentimes say that's kind of the difficulty with an anti-hero, but I've never really, it's a work of fiction, so you don't need to do that. But a lot of people, I think, they feel compelled to explore the depths so much that you create this dark character who is so enveloped in that darkness. Do you find it difficult to not do that, or is that fine for you?
I find it interesting to actually play with that, right? And I think with characters like the Punisher, because he's human, he has a past, he has morals, he feels slighted by the world because of what happened to his family. So if you're writing a character like that, you could play off of that and have him, his conscious dip into that of like, what am I becoming? And that's an interesting thing. Some people might enjoy that, some people might not. Our character, the Silhouette, he's basically a ghost. Like, he had a past, he doesn't remember what it is, and as he figures out what his past was, he's kind of contemplating if he's going to let that define him. So at the end of the Lost Pages 2, he has this ability where he could look into people's eyes and see basically their soul and see if they're a good person or a bad person, the good things they've done in their life or the bad. He gets into this point at the end of the story where he looks into a puddle on the ground and looks into himself, and he sees flashbacks of who he was, which he didn't know because he kind of has amnesia about that, and he sees what he doesn't want to see. He sees that he could have been a bad person that did bad things, and how does that change him? And in the third book, we'll see a little bit of that where he has this self-doubt, and he's like, someone comes seeking help from him and kind of like mentorship, and he's like, I can't, I'm not the right person for this. Like, I don't even know what I'm capable of, and if I am a bad person, so I can't help you. And playing with stuff like that is the character arcs that I like,
Yeah, when you get to play on that psychology.
That inner turmoil there of the character. I feel like it makes them feel kind of grounded,
Yeah. And it sounds like you're doing it the right way, honestly, because you could come in there and you could create a character like this that just seems like they're a wrecking ball throughout the whole entire book. And they're not, I don't want to say relatable, because every character shouldn't necessarily have to be relatable, but that they're not believable in terms of their motivations. It's kind of like, it reminds me of wrestling, right?
Oh, yeah.
When back in the day, it was like you had to be of a certain physique to just have these moves come across believably.
Yeah.
If you were scrawny and whatever it was, it wouldn't fool the audience if all of a sudden you're surviving all these moves, you're pulling off these things, you're beating up these guys twice your size, whatever it may be. So you had to be of kind of an imposing nature, and I don't want to go down that road of modern wrestling with a lot of things that have happened and some of these characters that are built like us.
Yeah.
And that believability has kind of gone out the window. I mean, hey, if you're into it, good for you. But
I just went to excuse me, I just went to an AEW show last week.
Oh yeah.
I was second row, so that was pretty exciting. But like getting into wrestling actually the last few years has taught me a lot about storytelling, which is interesting to
totally
hear. But it's that back and forth momentum. It's awesome because comic books and wrestling are some of America's, mainstays for story. Like
total Americana, totally.
Yeah. So looking at the similarities in how you push a narrative forward and the struggle between good and evil in a match in a comic is really, really fun to look at.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that, because there are so many of these storylines. And what's your favorite era of wrestling before I start trouncing upon it, just in case?
Probably like late 80s stuff.
Oh, okay, great. We're on the same page. All right. Okay, so
Jesse Ventura commentaries.
Yes. Oh man, Gorilla Monsoon. Yeah, all those guys. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm not gonna ruin your favorite era of wrestling with any critique here. I'm not gonna dive too deep though. But I love that era where it felt like you had just the right amount of storyline, right? It wasn't like these big giant diatribes in the ring for like 20 minutes. It wasn't this massive soap opera with muscles kind of a thing. It was, you said what you had to say. You looked into the camera, you brought attitude, and then you took it out in the ring. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like you just go in the ring now and everyone's got a microphone and it's Jerry Springer in a ring.
I remember when I was young and watching, WWE, probably like right when it turned to WWE, and everyone was always doing their interviews and promos in the ring, and I'm like, when did this? And I was young.
Yeah,
like, why are they in the ring doing this? I remember when they were backstage and then they'd come into the ring, it made me feel like something is off,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it took,
Why are you talking? Why
yeah,
aren't you beating the crap out of each other?
it made it not into a battlefield anymore, right? It was now a stage instead of a battlefield.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, things like Piper's Pit. Yeah, those
Yeah.
were Roddy Piper. Oh man. But yeah, when they were backstage and doing their thing, it seemed like they were sequestered, right? They were these dogs that were leashed up and ready to go, and they're just foaming at the mouth. But then when they all came onto the ring to foam at the mouth at each other, and then they're kind of taking turns with the microphone, I'm
Yeah.
just like, what is? Beat each other up. Beat each other up. That's what you should be doing in the ring right now. You shouldn't be talking things out. You shouldn't be smack talking, whatever. You should be beating each other up. But yeah, so and it feels like that kind of progression in storytelling for wrestling also happened at the same time with comics. Comics started becoming, what are you guys doing? Why are you talking all the time? You should be
Yeah.
beating each other up.
Yeah.
And in the same thing with we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s with wrestling, especially as it starts to transition, you have that same kind of thing with comics. I wonder if there's any kind of thing that if someone can document the changes in comics that also occurred within the changes of professional wrestling, because now that I'm thinking about it, it really seems like there has been. And then you have this upswing in professional wrestling where you have things like AEW and all these other factions of wrestling where it feels like they're the indie guys that are coming on up against
Right.
the big two of the WWE. And it's more entertaining and it's a better product, and they're getting back to the roots of what made the old product great, which is it's so strange to see. But again,
Yeah.
like I think there's a lot of parallels there. I'm just realizing this now.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's really interesting.
Wow. Yeah, Black Hat wrestlers are some of the best actors in the world. I could testify to that. Roddy Piper was incredible. Talking to him and how he had such a great performance in the chair. But so back to your comic, your stories, your characters. Now, talking about again the psychology of these characters and writing these kinds of darker characters. What do you do to prepare yourself to get into that headspace so it does come across as believable for the reader?
It's, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. Um,
Is it easy to snap into that mindset? Because people always like to think that writers have like these rituals. You
yeah,
gotta get in, in character, and you're out there and you're acting it, and you're saying dialogue out loud, and you're almost kind of doing this weird, crazy person dance with yourself.
right.
And then there's other writers that don't do that at all. They just go, okay, time to write, and they just do it.
Yeah, it really depends. I'm not the kind of person that says stuff out loud and like acts it out. I'll, like, I've said this before. I'll go take a shower and think of a scene that I know that I'm going to be writing that night, and just think it over. And
Does
in the
he know
shower,
you?
yeah. See, there we go. Susan wrote a note. I'll take a shower, and if I come up with something that I like, so I don't forget it, I'll just run it over in my head over and over again. And I'll do that the same if I'm out and I don't have something to write notes down or whatever. I'll just relive the scene in my head, so I have that down and memorized. And sometimes I'll get to the keyboard and I'll write that scene, and then I'll end up writing 6 pages of story, and it just flows out. Other times it's a little bit harder and you got to muscle it, but I've never really experienced like crazy writer's block. It's more of, I find a problem in the script and I'm like, how do I get over this problem? Like, I just finished a 60-page story for a crossover that I'm going to do with another creator, and there was kind of like a speed bump in the middle of the story. It was originally supposed to be 48 pages, so I had a page count issue, and I'm like, what can we do here? I need to inject this information so the reader knows this before we can go any further. And it just took me probably like a week and a half to kind of mold it together. But yeah, I never really had trouble jumping into different characters. Especially, I like telling stories that kind of like now, or because this is early in my career, I guess, it's easier for me to tell stories that focus on one character at a time. John Malin hired me to write a graveyard shift story, and it was just focused on his Brom character, which is like his Van Helsing guy. He's kind of like Cable, and that was a 48-page story, just focused on him, a little bit of his backstory, and I didn't have to worry about like a big team or anything interacting with each other. And for kind of up and coming writers that are getting into comics, I think that's a smooth transition into that, because you could focus on the pacing, focus on the storytelling and the character, and you don't have to worry about any supporting actors, I guess.
Yeah. And that brings me to a question I was just about to ask you as well, but you kind of answered. But if you want, you can clarify further or expound upon it further. Do you find it easier to write for one character at a time, one main character, and what they're going through, what their journey is, whatever it may be? Or do you find it better or easier to write an ensemble, a team book?
I think it's more. I think could be more fun at times, just especially because if you're trying to grow a universe like I am, I really want my readers to connect to these characters before I really put them through hell, right? Because then they're going to know the character and they're going to feel for the character more. And I think it is less hectic writing for kind of like a smaller cast of characters. And you have your like quick, supporting characters that are in there that you could maybe delve into later, which I definitely do that. I'll leave like breadcrumbs of here's a new character. We'll get back to him later, and hopefully the audience lashes onto those and want to see more. But yeah, I've heard this from a lot of people. Team books are just that more complex when you're dealing with that.
Yeah, to juggle those cast of characters and kind of give all of them proper amounts of page time to develop, and so it's not just really more like still a solo or a buddy book with a couple supporting, but a true kind of team book. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of different hurdles that come with the juggling of the multi-personality team book. But I think a lot of people out there nowadays, especially in comics, I think the readers are I don't want to speak for the readers, but this is just what I see. I think that they are picking up on a lot of the writers out there, that when they write these books with all these different characters in them, they all kind of sound the same. They all kind of behave the same, and it wasn't always like this. Like you pointed out on X-Men, I'm thinking you're probably talking about Chris Claremont as the writer, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, he did a wonderful job with juggling the different personalities and making you feel as if they each were unique individuals.
Right.
So when you're going in there and you're writing your books, is there a character that you really latch on to, that you love writing about and talking about?
It's I just have a blast working on all of them. Like when I was writing the first Lost Pages, because it's set up almost an anthology, more of like Sin City vignettes, right? Everything takes place in the same universe. It's probably like 12 to 15 pages focusing on each character, transitioning through there. So by the time I was done writing it, the final story in there is this character called the Masquerade, who's like this pulpy, almost like the Shadow, the Phantom character. He's based in the 1930s, the master of disguise. He speaks in iambic pentameter, like Shakespearean language. Like, it's just so much fun for me to write, because I love, rhyming and poetry and stuff like that. But then going from that and jumping on to the Lost Pages 3 with Crimstone, it's just totally a different pace. And I kind of like transitioning into different genres like that. So this series has been just a blast, because you have your anti-hero, you have your kind of like 90s over the top bombastic character with with Crimstone. You have more of a pulpy feel with the Masquerade. So it's been such a treat to delve into this series, and I want to by the 6th volume, because I think that's where the story arc wraps up. That last volume is going to integrate them all, so they're going to meet each other. So I'm kind of like, this is kind of like training for me to show these people who these characters are. So when it does come to a kind of team aspect, they'll all have their own voices, and the stakes will all be there. And hopefully, if I've done a good job, the readers will feel for these characters when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, that's a really great way of looking at it, and I think that's the right way to do it. Whenever you're gonna build any kind of universe whatsoever, and let's face it, if you're continuing and you've got a series and you've got characters, you've got a universe.
Yeah.
You don't need to have some big gigantic corporation or 50 different titles or whatever and have a universe. You can have a universe and it's just that one book or 2 books or whatever it is, but you can absolutely do what you've been doing and build up that universe organically. There's so many cases where people, I think, they go into it, and we've seen so many companies over the years. You probably can even think of a couple of books and companies off the top of your head that aren't really, those lines aren't really around anymore, and they come guns blazing with their whole universe, and they're gonna take the comic world by storm or whatever, and they force this whole universe onto people with like 12 books at once, and you get all the 12 books. And whenever I see that, I go, why? I don't even know if I want the 1 book.
Yeah, for sure.
You want me to get 12 to understand what's happening?
Well, that was the thing, because we had the Silhouette, right? And while I was on that break, going to school, I came up with these other characters with my brother that would fit in that universe. And instead of taking, 5 years to introduce all these characters in their own book, we were able to puzzle it together in the first one with the vignettes. And then also what we did too is we polled our audience, our backers, who was your favorite character from the Lost Pages? And Silhouette was number 1. So,
yeah, I dug that character.
Thanks, man. Yeah, book 2 focuses mainly on the Silhouette, developing his character. And then so we're just going down the line now of the popularity, to boost that up. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Smart. You mind if I ask you, how old are you?
I'm 29. I'll be 30 in September.
Well, wise beyond your years, Phil Diaz.
Thank you.
Man, oh man, very nice. Normally I have to, someone your age, I'm going to have to be like, listen, you young whippersnapper. I might only be about 10 years older than you.
But you remember when I submitted a story to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a Lost Pages story. It was a 4-page short for one of our characters, Wildcard, who's like this sorcerer from Merlin times. And he's kind of like, almost like Mignola's Hellboy character. Mignola says, like, his Hellboy he could throw in any situation and it'll be a Hellboy story. Like, he could put him in, a fairy tale story or something like that. So that was like kind of the blueprint for our character Wildcard, where he lives throughout time. He could be on a pirate ship, he could be in Camelot, he could be fighting Anubis, which he was in that story. So I'm really excited that then Lost Pages 4 is going to focus on him. So I'm excited to delve back in.
Oh, very nice. All right, Phil. So we've got a 1 hour or so show, give or take a couple minutes.
Mm-hmm.
This is we passed a little bit over the 30-minute mark. We're going to take a quick break. And then the second half of the show, I'm going to put a link in the chat. If anybody wants to join on air with us, you can ask Phil a question. If you've got a comment for him about his book, whatever it may be, feel free to join us one at a time. But we will be back in about a minute. You're watching Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Simeti, and I'm here tonight with my guest, Phil Diaz of The Lost Pages. See you guys in just a minute. All right, we're back. Thank you guys for sticking with us. I'm here with Phil Diaz of the Lost Pages. I'm going to put that link in the chat for you guys if you do want to join and come and say hello on air. There it is. All right, so if you've got questions or comments for Phil, not for me, for Phil, come on down and say hello, and we will do our best to respond in kind. All right, so I'm gonna put your campaign here on screen just so people can see for a second here. All right, the link is in the description of the show, but I'm also putting it here in the chat too, in case you guys want to go check it out. This campaign is still in demand on Indiegogo. The Lost Pages 3, Crimstone by Zaid Comics. All right, so something else that I did want to pick your brain about was, again, as you're juggling this kind of story with these characters, these very, we'll just say it. We'll say they're violent. There's a lot of violent things that occur in this book. Sure. Is this mature rated, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, you got this awesome. I love this with the homage to Lobo's back, and you actually got Bisley to do that. That's great.
So crazy.
So when you have a character like this, when I think of Lobo, I love Lobo, but I can't think of who the hell would be considered Lobo's arch rival. Does he have one?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like in the early stuff, like when Bisley just jumped onto him, he was kind of always rivaling with Vildrox, who's one of the he's one of the Brainiacs, I'm pretty sure. He basically captured Lobo. He's the guy that took his power away from him, that he would multiply from a drop of blood.
Okay.
But so he kind of like reluctantly has to work for him to go on these missions. He was part of the Legion team. But other than that, nothing really, because I think Lobo works best in like mini-series or one-shots, right?
I agree. Yeah, I like seeing Lobo come into something else or to someone else's world and kind of just wreak havoc.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's gone up against Superman, but all of his rivals he usually kills, so...
Yeah, exactly. You know, do you have a situation like that with Crimstone or any of the other characters you hear? Do they have a villain who they kind of seem to constantly go up against, or is it a situation in a way like Lobo where he kind of just kills everybody?
No, they will. 'Cause I love villains and like Rogues Gallery, so we're kind of building that through this. Crimstone, if you scroll down another page, you'll see the new villain we've created for him, and Crim is an imaginary friend, and this guy Wastoid is kind of his like antithesis, the other side of the coin, where he is, we call him an imaginary fiend, but everybody could see him and he can affect the real world. Where
he's got eyeballs for teeth.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's crazy. So I love his design. Tommy Patterson did the design for us. I was basically like, our character creation process on this was, I had the name Wastoid. I've been wanting to use that for years, and I'm like, I want a monster that reminds you of toxic waste, and instead of eyes he has teeth, and instead of teeth he has eyes. So he just like knocked it out of the park with this.
That's great. Yeah. I love the visual on that, man. That's amazing. Now you and your brother, you guys are the writers on the book, right? You're not the artists.
No, I write. My brother has been helping me write these stories for years since we've created these characters. He does the art on our Magic Cop series.
Oh, okay.
And for the Lost Pages, we hire our amazing buddies that are working on this. Like this guy, Dan Dahl, you know him.
Oh, yeah. Dan does great work.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Very nice.
So that's a little bit of silhouette. We're also doing an ash can that Dan's doing all the pencils for, called The People, which is another vigilante character who's human. He doesn't have any powers or anything, so he's kind of a good rival to the silhouette. As you can see there.
Oh, this character right here.
Yeah. It's awesome working with Dan because he read the first book before we started working together, and he really dug the stuff. So I think it shows with his work too. He's working on stuff that he enjoys to be creating. So I'm very lucky to have hooked up with him. He's an awesome illustrator.
Yeah, I think that matters so much. I see in corporate comics sometimes people that come across, and you're talking about before, things like writer's block. I've never understood people who work on their own characters and their own stories having writer's block.
Yeah.
Or worse, when and I've talked to a lot of people that experience this. I've had creators at Alterna that have allegedly gone through this. They'll say, I just don't have any more stories to tell.
Yeah.
And it's not that they set out to tell the one story. I totally get that. When it's kind of more like making a movie than it is making a series, you know. But when it's like, I've got an ongoing series, like this is how it's pitched to me. I've got an ongoing series. I've got so many things I want to do with this character, whatever, yada, yada, etc. And then they'll get to like issue 4 or 5, and they're like, I'm just so burnt out. I don't have any more stories to tell. I'm working on King Cryptid, and I'm like, I don't know how anybody doesn't run out of... I come up with one story, and 3 other story ideas spring from the one story. It's a never-ending thing. It's like the Hydra.
Yeah.
I'm chopping off one story's head, and 2 others are growing in its place. Every single time, I have to stop myself and contain the ideas.
There it is.
Oh, yeah, look at that. He knows what's good.
Yeah, I'm through issue 2, and I'm loving it, man.
Oh, thank you, man.
It's so fun.
Yeah, exactly, Black Hat. Is that I have more stories than time to tell them all.
Yeah.
It's exactly how I feel. It's not about what stories do I tell. I'm always like, what story do I not tell today? What story do I not put in this lineup for the next batch of issues or whatever?
Right.
So does that ever happen to you? It doesn't sound like it, but does it ever happen to you where you just feel like, I don't know what story to tell with these characters anymore?
No.
And you have to sit there and think?
I have a whole Google document that is just, it's called characters/stories. And it's pages of story ideas, pages of characters that I want to do one day, because it's, different new IPs that are, beyond the Lost pages. What I really wanted to do in this kind of like story arc after the first one, each of these Lost pages books have a loose theme or kind of like iconography of gold. So like Lost Pages 2 has the gold foil here, the villain in it, his name's El Dorado, and he's powered by a golden, South Central American amulet. And I had one for Wildcard, one for Masquerade, but I didn't have one for Crimstone. And I knew that I wanted to do Crimstone as the 3rd book, so I incorporated it on the cover. One of the big bads in this is that monster on that first cover. His name is King Loath, and he is this inner demon that rules Jasmine's mind when Krim gets thrown back into it. And he's got this golden crown, he's got these big tusks. So that's how we incorporated the gold thing. So that was a little bit where I'm like, how am I gonna incorporate this overarching theme? But no, I really don't get blocked on stuff like that. I agree. It's like you're working on your own characters. How are you not just housing the stuff oozing out of your head,
Like every time I hear that, I just think that's probably just something you're not really that excited about telling. That's something that you feel like, yeah, maybe if I tell this and it picks up and people are interested in it, it'll be worth it. Maybe I'll get a deal somewhere and then they can go and option it or whatever. But you're not sitting there with that just that light bulb that goes off and inspiration hits you and you're like, yes, this character, this world, this is it, and then just the stories flow. I think a lot of people run into that because of the opposite, because they're already sitting there not knowing what to do. There's no inspiration at all, and they're just like, I gotta come up with something, I guess.
Yeah.
And then they go and they shop it around, and the worst thing that happens to those people is they get published.
Yeah, you're right.
So like they did everything wrong, because now all of a sudden you're getting published. And artists do this a lot too, where they'll offer, like, let's say 3 thumbnails, right? And they'll put one in there that they hate, that they don't like at all, and then that's the one that the client picks. And now you gotta draw, like, don't put in the thing that you hate drawing or that you think is total garbage, because more often than not, the universe is going to come back to bite you in the ass and say, hey, that's the thing you're going to end up working on. So and then you get resentful of these characters you've created and resentful of the people who like them, and so on and so forth. It's not doing anything positive. Now, when you've got these characters in the Lost Pages, and obviously you've got a whole bunch of them, you've got so many designs here. You've got so many looks. This is something that I don't know if I can even quantify it in a way that makes sense for people, but I always feel the need to ask this of other writers, especially those that are hiring their artists. How do you know which artists to hire? How do you know when, yes, that's the look? Are you going out there looking specifically for someone that can do that based on something you've seen them do? Or are you taking samples of things that they've done and you're scouting? How do you go about it?
So that's actually something that's given me the most, I guess, stress, It's, going from book to book. Like if an artist can't work on the next book, choosing between two new artists, being like, oh, is the audience going to like this one better or this one, So, and that's something that I asked my brother, like, that those decisions like that is like, oh, I hate making those decisions, because the possibility of this looking better than, to someone rather than the other person's, decisions like that I don't like making, but you have to make them. I mean, we're so lucky because there's so many awesome artists right now that are wanting to make cool stuff. The ground is so fertile in the crowdfunding scene in CG. It's so amazing, and lucky to, like, Ricardo Jamie, who's doing the interiors for the Crimstone story. He was suggested to me by a buddy, Matt Fowler, who works with him. He actually got him to do a fan art piece of Krim, his character, Joe Sontag's character, Reaper Destroyer, and it just blew me away. And he kind of elevated the look of Krim, made it his own, and was still very open to suggestions and the little details that this character has. And it's not a easy character to draw, I think, especially because he has the tattoo thing.
Yeah,
he's got the tattoos on his arms. The good thing about that is, though, since he's imaginary, the tattoos change all the time, so they kind of reflect what's happening in the situation.
Oh, that's a good workaround,
which is pretty fun. So so they don't have to stick to a schematic on that.
All right. Once again, guys, I hate to interrupt you, Phil. Just one second. If you guys do want to join, make sure to join as soon as you can. There's the link. You can come on here live with us if you got a question or comment for Phil.
But sometimes it's just like seeing either fan art, which is amazing. I still can't believe that people are doing fan art of these characters. That's so cool. We've actually hired a lot of artists who won our fan art contest. Like Alan Alonso, he goes by the Howl Comics. He won the Magic Cop 1 fan art contest, and we hired him for the Masquerade, and he did all of the story art for the Masquerade. Freaking so cool, so Bruce Timm pulpy
stuff. Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and that's from the first book. Also, Avery Butterworth, who won
I know that name.
Yeah. He's now inking the People story over Dan, but this was his fan art contest for Lost Pages 1. He won this, did the silhouette, and now we've been working with him ever since.
That's great.
It's been so awesome. But just, and then when you see Dan Dahl draw anything, it's like this guy could draw literally any of my characters, and I'd be happy with it.
Yeah. No, I hear you, but that's the thing. I get asked that all the time. As well, what are you looking for when it comes to an artist? Because I'm always looking to hire artists for King Cryptid issues for the future, and I just have to tell them I don't know until I see it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
you're right.
it really helps if you draw the character, so I get where you're gonna kind of go with King Cryptid. But I can't sit there and quantify it and say, you know, this kind of line work and this kind of build and this kind of express. I'd use vague terms like dynamic, expressive,
Yeah.
you know, pack emotion into each page, you know, proper page composition, all these different kinds of other things in terms of looking for an artist. But it it's still it's so vague because the visual isn't there to understand what that is. I could be talking about one of the artists that you have. I could be talking about John Byrne. I could be talking about, you know, just a variety of artists that could do it right. But for me, especially, and it seems like the same way for you, because the Lost Pages is kind of like an anthology style book, right?
Yeah, so like the first one definitely, and now we're like focusing on each character, but they still there's a few pages where the style changes. So in this one, the first 10 is done by Dan, and then you meet the hobo who's telling these stories, and he tells you the Ricardo Jamie Crimstone story. So,
Yeah, yeah. So you're looking for art styles that aren't just one artist, there you go, set them loose and they do the whole book. You're looking for the right artist for the right story,
yeah,
for the right character, you know. But yeah, so if you're out there and you're an aspiring writer and you're putting things together, the best advice I could give you is to get as many different people to submit samples to you on their work. If they're going to be kind enough to even draw something of your character, that goes a long way. But also be aware that if you're an artist and you're putting yourself in that position as well, you're not going to draw a sample or fan art or whatever and sit there and expect compensation. I've seen a unbelievably stupid conversation over the past 3 days between, I'm not going to say the two names because I don't want anybody to go to them, but if you've seen it and you know what I mean, it's taking place on Twitter, where stupid conversations occur, really, of somebody who is within the you know, big two side of it, the corporate comics industry, being upset with somebody else because they're having a fan art contest. And
right.
saying that's like ripping people off and taking advantage of the artist and all these insane things that I'm like, it's a fan art contest, you know, and there's a prize if you win.
Right.
All of a sudden, this is like every single company has done it. I mean, Marvel used to have a book, I'm pretty sure, that was almost like draw your own stuff in this book and send it to us and maybe we'll hire you. And
Yeah.
they did that, like, you know, in the 80s or something like that. Wizard used to have that envelope fan art, you know, the Wizard magazine, and then you would get published or whatever in the magazine, and I think you got some kind of a prize. The amount of people that have gotten their first break into getting anything published through fan art and then go on to have careers in comics, it's astounding. So for someone to come along and be like, no, that's not the way, you're taking advantage of, oh my lord. This is where the industry has gotten. It's no longer about like encouraging people to draw, encouraging participation of up and comers. It's about, but they might take a job from me that I never would have got or applied for to begin with.
It's ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely crazy. But yeah, so if you're out there, and you're looking for work in terms of drawing on someone's book or just trying to get hired to draw on people's stuff, put your art out there. Put your art out there, and if you're specifically looking to, you know, attract the attention of PHILL DIAZ here with his stuff, draw his characters. What a better way to show, hey, look at what I got. You know, look at my great take on your character. You know, and then be approachable, have the right attitude, and that's part of having the right attitude. But there's so much idiocy in the comics industry. That's why I'm so glad to be like a step outside of it, so you can view the idiocy from the outside. But sometimes it comes, you know, and it gets personal and in your face. But Luckily, it's not there for too long.
Yeah,
Man, oh,
this
man.
was the fan art winner for Lost Pages 2. Kinmara, Jen Snowden, she did this awesome piece of Crim.
Oh, wow. What's the name again?
Jen Snowden. She goes by Kinmara.
Oh, wow.
She's on the Drawn and Quartered fan editions all the time.
Very nice.
Great stuff. Yeah, really cool. And this was a great page that Dan did. The ending shot of Lost Pages 2. So number 3 picks up right where this one left off too. You see a little conflict between the silhouette, and this is our young female kind of heroine, Matte Black. She's kind of like our Kitty Pryde character, learning new powers, seeking mentorship, like that. So.
That's fantastic stuff. I mean, you guys have really great art on that. You really do.
I get blown away by every page that comes in. It's amazing.
Yeah. And speaking of people who've drawn fan art and then got hired, Kier. Hey, what's up, Kier? Kier Covington in the chat. He drew fan art of King Cryptid. And then I was this guy's drawing King Cryptid better than me. I got to hire this guy. And that's how that worked. You know, and most people are like that as well. Man, oh man. What a weird industry. But yeah, you've got a lot of great artists on that book. If you haven't checked it out yet, guys, go check it out. Lost Pages 3, Crimstone by Zaid Comics is up right now. It's in demand. And there is the link one more time for you guys. We got 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left before we're at the hour. Phil, is there anything that you wanted to talk about, touch upon, give a shout out to that maybe we haven't yet?
We are coming up to 40K on the campaign. If we make it to 40K, then everybody is going to get a exclusive playing card. We did a playing card for the last campaign. Let me see if I have it here. It's a special card, Ace of Spades, and this was the silhouette playing card by Kenneth Rocafort. Amazing.
Oh, beautiful.
Crazy. So he did another one, and so if we hit 40K, he's doing the Crimstone playing card, and it's going to be a King playing card, and it's at the bottom of the campaign there. He already did it. It looks freaking crazy. Talk about another guy that he could just draw any character, you know?
Oh, yeah, Ken? Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I saw that art too, and he was posting it. I didn't know it was for that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. So hopefully if we get to 40K, everyone will get that. And there's another trading card that everybody's getting, a sticker, bookmark. Oh, Doug Mankey did an amazing bookmark for us. It's another one of my favorites. Insane. So it's not just the book. It comes with a bunch of free stuff. And then if you guys haven't read the previous stories, we're doing this new format. It's a manga-sized 212 pages, all the previous content in black and white grayscale. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's only $20, so you know, for the new people, it's a perfect way to jump on, and then you can get the book number 3.
Very nice. You know, it seems like you've done this before, Phil.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Man, oh man. Before you go, how much longer is this going to be in demand?
So we should be shipping in the fall, and I usually keep it open through fulfillment. I might change that this time because we might do another campaign on maybe Fund My Comic. We have Eric Hutfuls is in the process of working on these things, which would be a Crimstone Mad Ball. Look at this. Insane. Isn't that so cool?
That's crazy.
So we might do another second chance or Mad Ball campaign on Fund My Comic. So, but it'll definitely be going on through, say, probably August for the campaign. So.
Wow, man! Is your day job? Do you have a day job, or are you doing this completely?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my brother and I work for a arcade production company, so it's pretty cool.
All right, I was gonna say it seems like you would have to have some kind of creative adjacent field, some kind of job like that, because you got some good stuff there, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Very nice. All right, everybody, go check out Lost Pages after we end the show, which is going to happen in a couple of seconds.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Thank you, Phil, for coming out here and having this chat with me for an hour. And then also, I want to tell you guys just one last thing. The King Cryptid campaign for issues 5 to 9, I'm going to delay that launch 1 week. So it's going to be July 8th instead of July 1st. It's going to be launching July 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern on alternativecomics.com and Indiegogo. This week is just too nuts, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm rushing into it. I want to make sure everything's right. I want that extra, you know, day or two to just sit there and look it over, make sure everything is set, everything is right. I want to make sure that it looks good for you guys. It's going to be worth the wait. Just 1 extra week, you won't even notice it, and then we'll launch it July 8th. So that's it. Set in stone, set in crimstone is the launch of King Cryptid 5 to 9. So thank you guys very much. And again, Phil, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Yeah, Kier, don't worry. It'll be okay. just 1 more week here. Well, he's got issue number 9 on this campaign. But thank you guys so much. Everybody, take it easy. Have a wonderful evening. I'll be back tomorrow night at 8:30 Eastern with Billy Tucci and Niall Scala, and then Thursday at 9 o'clock with Aaron Lepresti. Hope to see you guys then and there. Everybody have a wonderful night, and thank you for watching Comic Book Radio. Everybody take it easy, and Phil, you as well, my friend. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.